cool. I think I always want to when I start these kind of things, I always expect music or something to
Yeah,
start playing or
yeah,
something. But like, it's just real
yeah.
life stuff. All right, brother man, how are you? How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Blessed. Thankful to be here. Excited.
Yeah,
Something that we've talked about starting up, and so yeah, just looking forward to it.
absolutely, man. This has been talked about for quite a long time now between you and I. I
Yeah.
think I want to say for years now.
Hmm.
And we're finally getting to get this launching off the ground. But I will say, I'm gonna struggle with this. I think more than you are
Mm.
because there's gonna be tons of conversations that I know I want to talk about,
Yeah.
but that I'm gonna need your hand, your right hand, to guide me through them. But just a little bit about what the podcast is gonna be all about. We are aiming to have these conversations, kind of like what I just mentioned, that are seldom talked about, especially within, I believe, like the male,
Hmm.
Latin, brown, and
Hmm.
black community.
Hmm.
And We just kind of want to make it normal,
Yeah.
man. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's taboo to talk about,
Hmm.
and I believe that this channel is going to counterbalance a lot of the stuff that you see out there because we are just two dudes, man. We're two cousins, if
Yeah.
anything. So that dynamic in itself is, I think, is wild, But yeah, so why don't we start off by seeing what your idea, because Dr. Antonio was the, I kind of want to say the, yeah, he was the one that created all this in his head. Came to me, and I'm just here for the ride. Tell me what's up.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I just appreciate just like the acknowledgement on a few different pieces, right? One, this has definitely been a conversation that we've been having for over some time now, right? I think you said years, and it literally has probably been years where due to some of the just work that we do personally, professionally, and then how we have tried to like have that translate into the messages that we put out there on social media, right? Whether it's our own personal messages or things that we have come across on the web that we just want others to be aware of, and it might be something around mental health, it might be around around boundaries, it might be around self love, right? And so I think over the span of those years, we've just recognized this alignment between the two of us, right? And due to life, right, we have our own separate responsibilities. So although we would casually mention it here and there, how cool it would be to have a podcast together, the reality is that any project of this magnitude requires genuine time, commitment, and an investment, right? Sometimes a financial investment, sometimes it's more so a mental, emotional, or physical investment, right? And so I think when we recently came together here in this very same space, sitting on this very same couch, and we just began to brainstorm and really just share our thoughts on what it is that we want to create and why we want to create it, it just made all the sense in the world of why wait any longer. We've already waited a few years, and having these more like casual conversations around it. But this time around, when I came in, right, not knowing fully like when would we get this off the ground. Mind you, this was probably like 2 weeks ago. The intentionality and the energy around the conversation made me think like, yeah, I'm ready. I mean, I wanted to
Yeah.
make an episode that moment, right? Like, because we
Yeah.
got lost in conversation that went beyond just the podcast, and I was like, yeah, we got some natural chemistry that has always
Yeah.
existed,
Yeah.
but we had never channeled it or tried to use it in this type of way.
Yeah, and I think, speaking on that, I so Antonio's my cousin,
Hmm.
but that's, I think it's always kind of funny because he always just sees somebody as one thing,
Hmm.
which is strange because you're more than just my cousin, right?
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah.
it sounds kind of wild to say because it's an obvious thing, but we've always had this connection, and I've told you this before. We've had one disagreement
Yeah, for sure.
in our
For
whole
sure. For
lives.
sure. For sure.
So that, when we did, I remember thinking, like, obviously going through the paces of like, man, this and this and that, but then reflecting on like,
Hmm.
dang, we've had 30 plus years on this planet
Yeah,
hanging out, and we've had one disagreement. So that speaks to the chemistry that you're talking
for
about.
sure. For sure.
And it's kind of funny because I think we walk two different
Hmm.
lifestyles,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We definitely do, and I think this should be a reflection of how you can have these healthy conversations with somebody who doesn't necessarily have the same faith as you
For
do,
sure. For sure.
right? And a bunch of other different things. And and that's, once again, that's kind of what we're just trying to bring. We're just
Yeah.
trying to bring a perspective, one of personal experience,
Yeah.
one of always love. I think that's one thing we
Mm-hmm.
both talked about. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to come from a place of understanding, and just fun.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of cut down all those barriers and all those
Mm-hmm.
walls, at least between you and I,
Yeah.
so that people can see that it's possible, man. Like, we don't really have to be leaning on social media for information all the time. You
For
got
sure.
somebody you can do it with right
Yeah.
here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ironically, we're doing this on a podcast,
Yeah,
but
for sure. And to circle back, right? I think much like my cousin John said, our goal, our purpose with this podcast is just to extend our reach, right? I think personally and professionally, we live a life where we want to give to others, right? Professionally, I do that in the educational realm, working at a university here in California, and I know you do that through the nonprofit realm, right?
yes,
And supporting similar communities of low income, marginalized members of the Black and Brown communities, right, who are just trying to find like a direction in life. And through the work that we do, whether directly or indirectly, right, we're trying to support that. But a part of us wanting to create this podcast is just asking ourselves, how do we extend that reach, right? Like, how do we give this wisdom, this advice? How do we share these stories of things that we have gone through personally, or maybe things that we've just observed within the environments that we have navigated, to hopefully help someone out there that's either going through a tough time, that is currently trying to figure out what's next in life, or who might dealing with imposter syndrome or insecurities, lack of self-esteem, right? And just hoping that we can uplift anybody that comes across our videos, right? I think you and I both agreed that success for us looks like one day us navigating the world in a random place, and someone coming up to us and being able to say like, hey, I came across your video, and it touched my heart, right? It touched my mind. It did something to me in that moment that I can't thank you enough for, right?
oh man, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think it's such an advantage to get that perspective, that professional perspective from yourself, and then also just being so passionate about everything it is that you do. Like, one thing that I can't speak about you is that when you're doing something, it's not only just half-witted, or
Mm-hmm.
you're not halfway
Mm-hmm.
in, halfway
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that when you do something, when you commit to something, it's a well thought process. Like, I think you're very quick to say no, I can't do it,
Yeah.
or if when you do, it's a positive. It's going to be fully done, fully cooked, as they say.
Yeah.
But I think, when I agreed to sort of, host this podcast with you and be a part of it, it also came from a place of passion, because I do
Yeah.
care about this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I was sort of thinking of, like, I don't know how sometimes, or why sometimes, I think of like catchphrases, right?
Yeah.
What's going to be my catchphrase?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is it that I'm doing this in one sentence and
Mm-hmm.
one quick? And I think that what I kept on thinking of was my failures, right? Like, everything
Mm-hmm.
that I've failed
Mm-hmm.
in,
Mm-hmm.
and through my failures, I found a bit of success.
For sure. For
So I
sure.
think that at the very least, I failed enough in life to successfully say a few things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of
Agree.
where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So definitely a place of humility. One thing that
Yes.
we understand is that we don't know everything,
Yeah.
not even close. I don't want to.
For sure.
You know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I'm an avid learner, and I
Mm-hmm.
love to learn about different
Mm-hmm.
situations, and that's what we hope to gain, in comments, and maybe through like an Instagram message or
For
something.
sure. For
Let us know
sure.
what you want to talk about, what you
Yeah.
want us to talk about.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I agree. I think that's one thing we talked about, is hoping that we're able to build a healthy, high level of dialogue and engagement with folks that come across our videos, right? I would never want somebody to watch the video and not feel like they could ask us a question, or want to know how did we come up with this perspective that we're sharing, right? Because I think that's what allows for the knowledge to feel that much more powerful when you have it, right? And I think we'll try our best to do that. I don't think we'll ever just make blanket statements of like, this is what we believe in, you have to believe this too, because I personally don't believe that, right? I think as I've also actually gotten older, I've come to value people who have different belief systems. And although that doesn't mean I may ever fully agree with what their belief system is, I actually do enjoy learning how did they come to that place, to that belief, and for it to feel so strong within them, right?
Yeah.
Because for as long as they're going to exist in this world, like I'm going to probably come across someone else who also has that belief system, right?
Right.
And I think, and I'm kind of going in a few different places here, but as a society, like I've noticed and I've observed this really interesting dynamic where, like, if someone doesn't agree with you, like, I can't talk to you, I can't be your friend. And I
Mhm.
think that's actually a disservice, right, to just humanity in general. Because you could probably learn a lot from that person. If nothing else, learn how people on the other side of the world or from the other perspective of life are looking at life. And who knows, they might actually say something that you're like, damn, I kind of agree with that. Like, I
Yes.
resonate with that. Like, I see where you're coming from, because now I'm not just listening to the surface level statement. As I sit here and learn why you have this surface level statement, I see how deep it is for you and why it matters to you, right? And so I think that's also a part of the experience we're trying to have, right? Is making sure that anybody out there can tune into what we're talking about and not feel hopefully offended or feel like we're closed minded, because I'd like to believe that's the last thing we are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in terms of like what you were talking about with the belief and belief systems and things of that sort, I've come to you before and I've told you, like, you know what? I love to talk to people who believe in something
Hmm.
more than this, bigger than them,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
For sure.
Something that's gonna change your day, something
Hmm.
that's gonna change your life, hopefully, something that's gonna change your decision making, or something about you
Yeah.
to be able to get you from where you're at now
Hmm.
to where you eventually want
Want to
to
go.
be,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
that's always a tough part
Yeah.
of life
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Not only picturing it, right? Like Denzel has a great quote, and I'm gonna misquote this because I get it wrong
For
all the
sure.
time,
Quotes are
right?
hard to remember verbatim. Yeah.
Verbatim, I can't,
Yeah.
not all of them because I'm a big fan of quotes, but he
Yeah.
says something along the lines of a dream is just a thought if you're not really putting
Like the work.
and putting in the
Hmm.
work, right?
Hmm.
So, my dream and belief system, just right off the bat, is, or especially with this podcast, is coming from the neighborhoods that we grew up in,
Yeah.
Richmond,
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
looking the way that we do and stuff
Hmm.
like that. We've kind of beaten the odds in a sense,
Yeah.
or like
The
the
stereotypes. Hmm.
stereotypes
Hmm.
of what we were supposed to be,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
My belief systems and my support systems has always been an integral part of getting to where I'm at now,
Yeah.
and I'm nowhere near done,
Yeah.
right?
For
Like I
sure.
have bigger dreams and I want
Hmm.
to do better and reach more people, and this
Yeah.
is this is a step towards what I want in the long run,
Hmm.
right? But growing up in Richmond, the neighborhoods that we grew up in, and even being surrounded with some of the people and seeing the
For
things that we
sure. That we
saw
saw. Yeah.
could definitely limit you, or
Yeah.
at least put that
Perfect.
cap on you,
Yeah.
right? We talked
Perfect.
about
Or
fixed
make you feel
mindsets.
like you're limited or there's a cap. Yeah.
Right. So then you
Hmm.
start to believe it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I think one thing that I used to, which is kind of funny thing, but when I used to tell people I'm from Richmond, they would always say like, "Oh, let me put away my wallet.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah. Yeah.
put my
Yeah. Yeah.
money
Whether joking
somewhere."
around or not, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And at first, it was like I took pride in that, bro. I was
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, you better watch your
Yeah.
wallet.
For
You
sure.
better,"
Yeah.
you
For
know.
sure. Hmm.
And then as I started to get older, I was like, "Wait a minute. They weren't necessarily saying
It was
it.
like in a complimentary way.
No,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah. Yeah.
very least, it was joking and
Yeah.
trying to make it a light
Yeah.
thing. But how can I change that?
Yeah.
How can I, when I
Yeah.
come and speak to somebody and say I'm from Richmond, California, get the result that I really want, which is, oh, you kick butt
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you take care of business and
Yeah.
your school system is this and your
Yeah.
community is that.
Hmm.
So that's why like I put in work with my brother and Selmo through moving forward.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's just sort of a volunteer thing. We started that. Well, someone started that almost 8 years ago
Yeah.
now,
It's
and I've
wild.
been
Time
involved for a
flies.
few years now,
Yeah.
for quite some years now. And then, as you mentioned, I'm part of a nonprofit, and I used to
Yeah.
work in the finance industry for over 10 years in different analytical roles. So I actually put my belief system and had to sacrifice what was a good
For
paycheck,
sure. For sure.
you
For
know,
sure. For sure. Yeah.
and
For something bigger than yourself, though.
something bigger than
Yeah.
myself. So
Going back
actually,
to that.
yeah. So aligning my belief system
Hmm.
with what I want in my just life, right, my career and everything. I want
Yeah.
that to be aligned as best as possible.
Yeah. And the impact that you want to make, right? And
Yeah.
for that impact to feel fulfilling and meaningful, right? The reality is we live in a capitalistic society. So for better or for worse, money is what you need to pay the bills. It is what you need to buy your groceries. It is what you need to get access to that gym that allows you to do your self-care, right? So
Hmm.
the reality is it can be really difficult at times to separate those two things, right? In regards to, like, okay, I want to give to the community, but I need to give to myself, right? And then there's so many belief systems around, like, well, you got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of the community, right? So I don't
Yeah.
think anybody is right or wrong about how they go about that, but I think the way that I would frame it is like there gets a point where you realize you have a calling, right? You have a calling in this
Yes.
in this in this world, in this life, And you realize that that calling may mean you have to make certain sacrifices, even if it's financial sacrifices, right? And thankfully, because of the work that you and I have put into our professional careers, we're still able to live comfortably, right?
Mhm.
But beyond the comfort that we're able to live with, we're able to live with this like fulfilling sense of purpose that when we wake up and whatever time it is, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and we gotta get dressed and we gotta get ready. And for you, you take public transportation, right? For me,
Yeah.
I drive an hour to work. That when we get there, we know we're gonna do something meaningful that day. Even if it's literally just saying good morning to somebody who probably just needed to hear that good morning.
Yeah. And that's so important, as if as I talk to the youth where
Mm-hmm.
I work at a lot, I actually tutor two youth now,
Mm-hmm.
two young Latino men who want to do better and can do better.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk to them or preach to them the importance of both being comfortable with yourself, but
Yeah.
also being comfortable where you're at,
Yeah,
if
for
that makes
sure.
any
For
sense,
sure. Yeah.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
with the body of friends that you that
Mm-hmm.
you have, with the
Mm-hmm.
family members
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
you keep within your tight circle, because it allows for the more comfortable hellos and the more comfortable
Yeah.
how you doings,
Yeah.
right? And not a
Yeah.
forced one, because I think that and when you start to force certain things like that, you set yourself up for like a bit of a disappointment
For sure.
if you don't get the
If you don't get
response
it
that
back,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
If you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
get the
yeah,
response that you want.
yeah.
But yeah, so just to give more perspective to the audience here, um, kind of we want to kind of go and dive a little bit deeper into your
Yeah,
background so you can
yeah.
let them know.
Yeah, so like John said, we grew up in Richmond, California, and I had a lot of similar, yet I'm sure different experiences. We're a little bit different in age, right? So there's
Mhm.
sometimes generational things as well, even within a shared generation. Um, but much like John said, growing up in that community, also I know I think I speak for the two of us in single parent households, right, with our
Yeah.
mother figures being that single parent who not only we relied on, but our siblings relied on, and then they obviously had to navigate things in a way to make sure we had a roof over our heads, make sure we had food in the kitchen. And I was the oldest, where that's a little bit different with you. I think you were
The
the
youngest.
youngest, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
there's a difference there. So I think for me, I joke around, but I was kind of like my mom's guinea pig. You know what I mean? Like I was like her first trial run
Oh,
with,
you were.
yeah,
No
right.
joking about that.
I was her trial run in within this U.S. culture, right? Because something that we haven't shared yet is our family's roots are from El Salvador,
Yeah.
right? And our families came to this country with the idea of the American dream, which is a lot more complex than I think they understood, or even a lot of people understand based off of what we see on television. And when you're growing up in a third world country like El Salvador, anything seems like it would be a dream compared to that reality, right? But then the other realities, you come here and there's a language barrier, there's a culture shock, right? There is a whole population of people that don't want you in this country, right? And so
Hmm.
I don't mean to get away from me, but I think in order for me to talk about me, we need to also talk about our family, right? Because
Absolutely.
they make so much of who we are.
Yeah.
And so our family came to this country with that, belief of wanting to not only try to obtain a better life for themselves, but if nothing else, set up their future generations to possibly obtain that better life, right? So although I was that guinea pig, and when I say guinea pig, I'll give you some examples, right? My mom emphasized and preached education, but by like the third or fourth grade, if I came home with homework, she wasn't able to help me though,
Hmm.
right? So there was kind of that confusion, like, wait, you're telling me you want me to do this, I don't know how to do this, and you don't know how to do this,
Yeah.
right? So there was a little bit of that disconnect. But what I did know was that my mom was working her ass off, sometimes two jobs, sometimes three jobs. And that I think alone was enough for me to like still believe in what she wanted for me, right? Even though I didn't get it, I didn't understand it. I struggled a lot in K through 12. So believe me, having the title doctor now is a very humbling and honoring experience. But I struggled a lot through my K through 12 because, again, as the first child, my mom was very unaware of like what resources existed. And that could range from like tutoring services, after school programs, anything. I think I had some, because we had some cousins, Sammy and Susanna, who went to this program called Making Waves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that was like a really cool program for them after schools. And I remember I would tell my mom, she's like, I don't know what that is. I don't think
Mm-mm.
I can afford it. So she didn't even look into it. Didn't even ask like Sammy and Susanna's mom, like, what is that? How do I get Antonio in there? Um, so I think there was a lot of, like you said, like limitations in my belief system of who I could be, right? I think the only thing that I was very passionate about, I know you can resonate, with sports, right? Like
Oh
sports
yeah.
is what we dedicated so much of our time, our effort into. For me, it was baseball. For you, it was soccer. And then, of course, we were pretty good at everything else, to be honest.
Yeah, you
You
were.
know, if I say
Yeah,
that
yeah.
humbly, but we were actually pretty good at everything else.
Hmm.
But the two things that we dedicated ourselves was for you again, soccer, for me, baseball. And I think in many ways that was such a life-saving experience because whereas I was in practice and preparing for games or going home and I was so obsessive over trying to be great at it, that took me away from being on the streets with a lot of my friends, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of my friends growing up, again in Richmond, California, their parents too were probably working 2 or 3 jobs, right?
for
So a
sure.
lot of our friends, when they'd go home, there was nobody there. So what do? You find other kids that don't got anybody else at home, and then you go roam the streets,
Hmm.
right? But in a community like Richmond, which has historically been disenfranchised, lack resources, hasn't always had the greatest role models, you have very impressionable minds out in the streets coming across these maybe older folks who might not have their best interests in mind, right? And I don't want to be stereotypical, but these were the things that I saw, and it was like drug dealers, it was
Hmm.
gang members, right?
Hmm.
And what I've come to learn is a lot of people that get into these things, they're just looking for a sense of like community. They're just looking for a sense of family.
Hmm.
Even if in the long run that's not the healthiest form of it, in that moment it feels like, well, I can go to them and I can talk to them. This guy here will put $5 in my pocket so then I can buy my hot Cheetos and my Coke or
Yeah.
Pepsi that my mom can't give me. Right. So then there's just so many layers to like growing up in a community like that. But once again, for me, it was baseball that saved me. And then knowing that I went home, even if my mom wasn't there, and it's so funny because you and I have a shared experience with this, our grandmas were there,
Yeah,
right? Our grandmas
absolutely.
played such a huge role in our lives because if we showed up late, they would let us know we showed up late. And it wasn't always
Yeah.
with calm words, right?
No.
It was like this accountability, like,
Right.
¿Dónde estabas?
Yeah.
¿Por qué vienes a esta hora? Right? And it's like, oh shit, yeah, I can't be late. So that's just a little bit about me in regards to like my humble beginnings is how I would frame it. And I can go deeper into who I became and who I am now, but I think I want to stop there just for folks to know like kind of who I was.
I think we will go deeper just naturally through conversation.
Yeah.
That's especially how I kind of unwind and unpack a lot of things
Yeah.
because I know that I have all these things in my head and I always go back and I think like, dang, I forgot to say this, or
Yes.
dang, I
Yeah.
forgot to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure this podcast is going to be one of those situations that
Mm-hmm.
every single time I'm going to feel that same way.
Mm-hmm.
But like Antonio said, like we do have a lot of similarities in the way that we grew up
Yeah.
within the family structure in the
Yeah.
house, like the house
Mm-hmm.
that we lived in, right? You have two siblings, I have
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
siblings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're the oldest and I'm the
Yeah.
youngest, so that dynamic is a little different. I love my sisters, and actually, this isn't a secret, and it's something that I've said and had a conversation with my mom a few times, so I know that she's comfortable hearing
Mm-hmm.
this because it's
Mm-hmm.
true.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, single mom household, she
Yeah.
had to work all the time. So my
Yeah.
sister was, in a sense,
The mom.
forced
Mm-hmm.
to raise my
Mm-hmm.
younger sister and I.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the times that we would see my mom come in, she'd be dog tired,
Bro, yeah.
and not necessarily in the best mood to have a
Yeah, for
conversation,
sure. You don't want to
you
bother
know.
them when they come in after a long day.
So
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me
Yeah.
because whenever
Yeah.
I saw my mom come in, it was always like let's duck and cover as
Yeah.
opposed to let's
Yeah.
go and talk.
It was like, let's get out of her way.
Let's get out of
Let's
her
get out of her
way,
way. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So my older sister Erica took a lot of that responsibility at a very young age.
Yeah.
Now I think back and I'm like, yo, how in
How?
the heck did you
Yeah.
have a sociable life and friends and stuff when
Yeah.
you had to be preoccupied with what we ate? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, and
Mm-hmm.
we were one of those families where a lot of times we didn't have, let's just say we had food to eat,
Yeah.
we just didn't have a lot of
We didn't have,
options,
yeah, a lot. It
you
was always
know?
like arroz, frijoles, like the staples of,
Exactly.
a Latino household a lot of
When
times.
people talk about like, oh yeah, I'm on top ramen noodle in
Yeah.
college, it's like,
Yeah.
yo, I bet I was on
Like, I
top
grew
ramen.
up on that.
That was
Like, what do you
that
mean?
was my
Yeah.
diet.
You were. I remember
K
I'd
through
see you eat
12.
that a lot, bro, when I'd go
Yeah,
to your house.
bro, and it was sopa cruda all the time,
That's
you know.
hilarious.
But we grew up, man, and we
Yeah.
did great. My mom did a fantastic job in just
Mm-hmm.
holding it all together.
Yeah.
I think that my sisters and myself kind of ended up being, like there's a great song from Residente Calle 13, and in one of his verses he says, "Yo soy tu obra de teatro," which basically means that like we are her play, we're
Yeah.
her play, we're
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
characters,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then and within this play called life.
Yeah. And
And
family. Yeah.
right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think that she did very well in preparing us for those roles.
Mm-hmm.
But the neighborhood was rough,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
different time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Oh,
grew
for
up in
sure.
the
In
90s,
the
so the
90s,
90s
yeah.
was a bit different where
Yeah.
our form of escapism was almost literally to escape the house and get
Yeah.
out and go
Yeah.
and play and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And without the parental guidance or at least enough role
Role
models
models.
around
Yeah.
your
Mhm.
your neighborhood,
Mhm.
you can get lost in all these kind
You
of
can.
extracurricular activities,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And growing up, I've lived with, I love still some of these people who were those characters in the
Involved in
neighborhood.
some of those things. Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful for them
Mhm.
because they kept me out of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was like times where you look at it and it's funny because, growing up and seeing what the things that you see in those kind of neighborhoods, that's your definition of
Yeah.
success,
For sure. For
right? Like
sure.
having rims and
Yeah.
having beat, that's how you know you made it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of strange because, well, it's not strange because I lived through it and I
Yeah.
and I know it, but it's I guess what I really want to say is it's hard to break that sort of thought
Like that
process,
belief system that that's
that
what
belief
success.
system
Yeah.
exactly,
Mhm.
because you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and but like I said, luckily some of my boys, one of my closest buddies, whom I know who I
Yeah.
will not name on the channel, just
Yeah.
because. Well, I mean, my boy E. I won't say my boy E.
Yeah.
Literally said, "Bro, this ain't for you." I was
Yeah.
trying to get in
Yeah. To
it.
get in. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
trying to get in
Yeah.
it. I think you mentioned something that was right on the money. Sense of community, because my boys were doing it, man. Like I
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
part of that. Now I don't only want the money coming in that they had coming in, but I also wanted like just to be part of
I was
that
gonna
whole
say
thing.
like the experience that they were navigating, right?
Yeah,
And right, I don't want to give too much information of because I know who you're talking about, but they also were in other activities that you did that were more healthy, right? So you
right.
spent time with them there. So you
Yeah, yeah,
had a multi-layered kind of relationship with them,
yeah.
right? Y'all would drive to school together. Y'all played
Absolutely.
sports
We
together,
picked you up a
right?
few times.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah,
then while they were doing those other things, that's where you were like, well, let me get into that world too. And they were like,
yeah.
no,
No,
like for your
no.
sake, let's keep you away from that world.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because they knew better, and like I said, I'm eternally grateful for that.
Hmm.
And I can't thank them enough for that. But sort of, kind of being in that neighborhood, you learn a lot of things
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you always get sort of a stereotypical kind of like thug looking
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
but these are some of the smartest people I know.
Bro, that goes to the street smarts, right? Like you
Yeah,
can't teach that. You gotta
yeah.
live that.
And I've worked with people with their plaques and their
Hmm.
degrees on
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
on their walls and stuff, and I've had some of the emptiest
Yeah, for
conversations,
sure. For
you
sure. For
know.
sure. Yeah.
So
Maybe shallow in
super
some ways.
shallow.
Yeah. Hmm.
A lot of times, just they didn't have a lot of substance to what they were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I say that to say that Richmond did mold me,
Yeah.
right, and it did shape me
Same.
to be a different breed. I
Hmm.
think people from the
Hmm.
hood are just different in
Yeah.
any hood
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
been to
For
different
sure. For
places
sure.
and
Uh-huh.
you see a lot of the same
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
you know.
Neighborhoods look similar. There's usually like some landmarks that you're like, oh, if you see
Oh yeah,
this, like you're in the
yeah,
hood, right? Whatever
yeah.
it is that it is for
You
those
see those
communities.
train tracks, you don't want to
Yeah, like if
cross
you
them,
don't go those train
right? You
tracks,
don't want to go
yeah,
past those train
yeah,
tracks, and it's really helped me a lot. So that's a reason why I get involved in my community
yeah,
because I know
yeah,
there's so much untapped potential there. It's
yeah,
just I kind of want to shake some of these kids so that they can shake it out of them,
yeah,
so
for
that they can
sure,
see it.
for
They can
sure,
see
for
what I'm
sure,
seeing,
for sure.
you know.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, that's kind of my big thing with this. I'm excited just to get this introductory sort of first episode out and launched so that they know what we're about.
yeah,
They know what the end goal is,
yeah,
right? We
yeah,
actually started with the end goal in mind. I
yeah,
love
for
that you put
sure.
that. We just want to be able to reach somebody and walk down the street, maybe a year, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years from now.
Yeah,
Hopefully, have it still going on and have
yeah,
somebody that we don't know,
yeah.
haven't touched, haven't seen come up
Mm-hmm.
to us and say, "Yo, man, that remember that first episode that which
For
what you guys were
sure.
talking about, how you guys grew up? That was me."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my goal, man.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I'm excited. Obviously, with each episode, the chemistry between us is just going to naturally evolve as well, right? I think what I just want to make sure folks know is that we're going to dive into conversations that we've never had before, right? Even
Yeah,
even right now, the way that I explained some of my upbringing, like some of that may have been new to John, right?
yeah,
And vice versa. Even when we got together for the brainstorming and the aligned vision to launch this, we learned so much about ourselves. Like we told each other stories that we didn't know about each other, but then that brought laughter and brought like this deeper level of understanding. and then I think confirmation of like, yeah, we need to do this.
Oh
Because
yeah.
that was like so organic. I remember I didn't want to leave that night. Like I think I was here for like 2 hours,
We were,
and I
yeah.
was like bummed out when I was in my car, and I'm like, damn, I have to go home, and I feel like that was so therapeutic. And I think
Heck
that's
yeah.
the one thing that I just, I hope kind of is also experienced is like there's a form of therapy in hearing these conversations taking place, because my hope is that then it allows someone else to feel like, you know what, I'm ready to have these conversations too with whoever you want to have them with. If
Hmm.
it is a professionally trained therapist, or if it is your mom, or if it is your father, or if it is your sibling, or just somebody that you're like, I'm ready to talk about this, and I think they'll be a safe person to kind of like allow me to land with however I land after I share these things.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that'd be something that that's something I know I've appreciated through the channels that I've watched and the videos and the
Hmm.
short clips and stuff that are now popping up on Instagram.
Yeah,
I take a lot of that, I try to dissect it, and I try to just regurgitate it out to the world
for
some way,
sure,
my
for
own
sure,
way.
with your interpretation. Yeah,
Absolutely. So when I come and I talk, with on whatever topic that we're talking about, just know that a lot of the stuff that I'm gathering have been from things that I've seen and heard
same, same.
throughout social media or maybe a
Yep.
conversation.
Hmm.
So that's another goal of mine. It's like if you can just take a little bit of what I said and apply it to conversations with your mom, with your dad, with your
Yeah,
cousins,
yeah,
mission accomplished,
yeah,
man.
for
Like
sure.
that to me is the beauty of communication, right?
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere that language is just the basis of what
Hmm.
communication is,
Hmm.
right? There's so
Hmm.
many different
Oh
avenues
yeah,
of,
for
of
sure.
where it can go.
Yeah.
And I aim to speak to people who not just look like me, but feel like
For
me, right?
sure, for
Who have
sure, for
gone through the
sure.
things that I've gone through, because
Yeah,
that's a lot of things that I've gone to. Like I said, I've failed a lot of
yeah,
things,
yeah,
and I've been down on a lot of things, especially myself.
yeah, yeah.
So when I come out of those kind of situations, I'm a huge advocate of mental health. So when I come
Yes, yes.
when I
Thank
come
you.
out of that depressive state,
Mm-hmm.
of ruminating and sort of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just being stuck, I
Yeah,
always come out gasping for air,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that I know that sort of feeling exists, and I know that a lot of times how that can be remedied is through seeing positive things and things you
mm-hmm.
can relate to
Mm-hmm.
on any kind of
Mm-hmm.
platform. So that's you
Yeah,
know
and I love how you mentioned the mental health, because I think that was one component that we hadn't yet directly said out loud. But I hope that,
yeah,
through the conversation that we've had thus far, that it feels clear to some out there. But if it wasn't, now it's said that I
yeah,
think we very much want to emphasize just the importance of mental health, right? And a part of some of the stories that we plan to share are how that has been shaped for us and how we've grown in that area, right? Especially when you think about the community that we grew up in, that wasn't a topic of conversation, that wasn't a class that we took, mental health
yeah.
101,
It was
right?
taboo for
Yeah,
people.
for sure. It
Yeah,
was things that you didn't talk about, right?
right.
Especially as a male of color within our community. Like if you shed a tear, showed any vulnerability,
Ooh, yeah,
that was like you had the dogs ready to eat. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
The vultures be
yeah,
circling
like they were
you, and,
ready,
and yeah,
circling, right? Because now you displayed a level of weakness that if they ever needed to utilize, like now they have it in their back pocket, right? So a lot of times, we would walk around and navigate the world so guarded,
yeah,
and to this day, I still see people doing that, right? And
yeah.
so I think it's just a reminder of how much these conversations still need to be taking place. And like you've mentioned on a few times, by people that look like us and who have felt like us and that come from similar backgrounds as us. um, I'll say this as someone who has been very excited to embark on this journey of our podcast. I definitely have seen that there is the existence of other podcasts, and so shout out to those content creators of Latino males, or just people of color who are trying to like also support this movement of these conversations. And so, the reality is what we're doing is not new, but we're really hoping that there is a sense of relatability, a
Hmm.
sense of just humbleness that comes across with what we share, and just like authenticity. Like we're really doing this at the end of the day because we hope it can help somebody. If nothing else, help one person. You know what I mean? So
Definitely.
I appreciated just the very direct emphasis on mental health, because that's really real.
Super important, man. Super important. You were mentioning the fact that the vultures and the dogs ready
Mm-hmm.
to eat. It's a sense of the mindset in the hood that you have to eat or be eaten kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Yep.
thing.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I think that could be a powerful tool if
For
redirected,
sure. If redirected. Mm-hmm.
right?
And yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
keep that cutthroat mentality,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be, something that affects another person directly
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of thing.
Yes.
you can sort of have that for
It's
yourself.
like
Like,
fuel for
exactly,
yourself to keep
right?
pushing forward. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I don't make this, then man, obviously don't feel down and just do it in your own way. But if I don't get this done, man, then I kind of suck, or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
however it works
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I think what we all have in common is the fact that when we don't do something, it's not a good feeling,
Yeah. For
right?
sure. For sure.
So a lot of these things that I've learned in the growing up in Richmond, especially with my boys, have been redirected,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
positive way and in a
Yeah.
positive light.
Yeah.
I'm starting to use one thing that you even have, um, that you're using and recommended, is instead of saying but, say and,
Yeah.
right? Because the buts basically just divide and kind of put a start and an end point on
Yeah.
something, and the and just gives it a
It's an
bit more of an
extension.
extension of
Yeah.
what it can be, in the continuation of it. So once again, it's just redirecting and changing a bit of the mindset of how you go about things, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that we are going to be different in one thing. I haven't seen this yet. We're both cousins.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I haven't seen a channel out there of cousins who are both
That's
kind of in the
fair.
same
That's
line of
fair. I
work,
agree. Yep.
right? So we do this professionally as well. Like
Yeah.
you reach the youth, and I also reach youth.
Fair. Fair.
I'm also involved in my community, and you're also in any way that you can also
Yeah.
involved in the community. So this is not just something we just wanted to do just cause we
Yeah.
thought it was cool. No, we thought it was necessary.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. One of my favorite figures in history is Malcolm X, right? And one of the sayings that I like just hold on to and embrace and utilize on my day to day is that by any means necessary, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that that's kind of our approach is that we will get these messages across, in one way or another. We're already doing that in our professional world. But again, I think we just have this ambitious goal of seeing just how many people we can really reach,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm excited to continue to see how this grows naturally. I'm excited for the moments of imperfection, the moments where we
Yeah.
stumble on our words, or
Yeah.
stutter, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you're gonna get like our raw, authentic selves in this space. It's so funny. I hope it's okay to share this, but a part of our planning process was determining, do we want to go live? Do we want to edit?
Of course.
And,
Yeah.
I think we're still like trying to figure out the route that we want to go. But where the editing allows for some beauty is just kind of like the visuals, right? And I think
Mm.
that may be a reason why we lean that way. But the one thing that I want to make sure is known is that in no way, shape, or form do I believe that we're ever going to edit to make ourselves look better than what we
No.
were in that given moment.
Right.
Like
That
if
defeats
we
the
said
purpose.
something, that like I then need to apologize for, like I
You
will
need to
own
do it.
that and take
Yeah.
accountability for it, right? Because I think that's something that's also important to model,
Yeah.
to be able to not feel this need to be perfect. And with that, in the moments of imperfection, if there's need to reconcile, like apologize, like that is, I think, something that I hope we can also model for anybody out there that might find that to be a bit challenging.
Yeah, man, because like oof, just off the bat, one thing that you probably didn't know is I had a speech impediment when I was young, so like I
Mm,
stuttered a lot when I was
mm-hmm,
younger. So I'm gonna do that naturally anyway.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, apologizing and just owning up to something is actually something that I'm going through with somebody who I love right now.
mm,
The struggle in doing so.
mm-hmm.
But I think I'd be very hypocritical if and then it would defeat the purpose of the actual podcast
Yeah.
if I went back and I deleted
If
something
we
you
like,
said,
yeah,
or something that I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
because it's just part of a natural conversation.
yeah,
We're not going to agree with anything,
yeah,
with
like
everything,
everything, yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So then that's cool too because we have it.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
said, we come from different. I'm Christian,
yeah.
right, and I go to church every Sunday. I'm part of ministry and
Yep,
all
yep,
that
yep,
stuff.
yep, yep.
And then you're very much more
Yeah,
spiritual.
for sure,
You
for
you
sure,
you 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 encapsulate more of a place I would say of understanding and intellect. You value that
for sure,
a lot.
for sure, for sure.
And man, I'm just pumped. First episode out.
Yeah, yeah, first
Yeah.
episode, and I definitely am just very thankful for anybody out there who watches either a short clip, the whole 40 plus minute, video. Just know that there's a lot of intentionality, a lot of love, a lot of just genuine energies that we're wanting to share with anybody out there,
Yeah.
and so I just thank whoever uh, felt they had the capacity and desire to watch any of the content that we just created.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All 10 viewers.
Yeah, yeah.
We're hoping for more,
For
but
sure.
we do understand the process. And we will dedicate time and resources, as you
Uh-huh.
said,
Hmm.
to making this a better production.
Yeah.
We're working with what we got.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's still, I think that the the substance won't change
Yeah.
no matter what camera we
For
get
sure. The
or what
message.
mic we get,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
The message will always be intentional.
So
Yeah.
that's our goal. Well, brother, man, let's
Yeah.
wrap this up.
Appreciate you.
Start this like we ended, like we started it. Thank you so much for tuning in, y'all. Please leave a comment if there's anything that you want us to talk about. My name is John. People call me Jay. Family and friends call me Jay, which means that you can call me Jay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right.
Professionally, I go by Dr. Antonio Martinez. A lot of people call me Doc. I think it's pretty cool. And so anybody out there can call me Doc or Antonio, whatever it is you feel comfortable with. But yeah, thanks again, y'all.
All right. Signing up. That's it, bro.
Yeah, that went by fast.